Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Hello, Tatiana. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Very well. Thanks for having me today, Yuri.
Of course. My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I appreciate it. So for the audience who is not familiar with who you are and your work, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
Okay, well, I do a lot of different things, but first and foremost, I consider myself a singer-songwriter and an artist. I think all of my work is really defined by an interest in helping mankind. So while I started out doing music, I've obviously expanded into the cryptocurrency space. I have a couple different podcasts. One is called the Tatiana Show, which is more crypto and politics focused. And then I have a new show that I started this year with a couple of my girlfriends in the space called Proof of Love. And so we talk about relationships, growing your emotional intelligence, all different kinds of personal development stuff. And then I also have a marketing and PR company called Crypto Media Hub. And I'm also a public speaker, and I continue to perform around the world. So recording my fourth album, but also going around and talking about crypto at the same time.
Wow. Congratulations. So you're a really busy person. How do you manage your schedule to get all of this done? Because I can't imagine that it's an easy thing to balance the multiple shows you're doing with a prolific music career and company.
I wing it. Sometimes, I wish I was a little bit more organized. I have a book called, The Art of Getting Things Done or whatever, and I haven't got it done yet. So, I constantly am sort of reading ways to be more organized. But to be honest, my life kind of really it kind of flows. I don't really have much of a daily schedule.
Okay.
I don't really put too many limits on when I shouldn't be working, which I'm trying the past year to get a little bit better at, setting up boundaries so I'm not working 24/7. But a lot of the things that I do sort of feed into one another.
Yeah.
And they're all sort of driven by that, I guess that activist heart. So it's easy to get it done, even though sometimes it could be a little bit stressful.
Yeah, I gotcha. Work that you truly love. That's fantastic. So let's start a little bit from the beginning. So you went to Berkeley for music. Why did you initially? So first off, what did you initially get involved in music for, and then why Berkeley?
So as long as I can remember, I always wanted to do music. My mom, she had a lot of really great taste in music, so she would play music by the 60s and 70s singer-songwriters that sort of helped with the Cultural Revolution here in the U.S. And I remember hearing Cat Stevens once, and he was doing Peace Train. And I thought to myself, wow, you can use music to convey an idea, and more importantly, to move culture in one way or the other for hopefully in a more just direction. Mm-hmm. And so that really stuck with me. In high school, I read a lot of dystopian novels. So 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. All different kinds of stuff like that, which of course had me a little bit fearful of the future. Also, my mom, she came from Poland, and Poland is a communist country when she was growing up there. So I remember going to her and saying, Mom, why don't we put all of our money together in a pile and everybody could take what they want? And that sounds like a great idea. And she said, no, that's communism. Go back to the drawing board. So I did. And when high school kind of finished up, it was around the time that Britney Spears and all these kind of porno pop stars were really becoming more popular. It was not really music that I could support or found any interest in. So I delved into a lot of older music by going to Berklee College of Music. It was, the #1 contemporary music school in the country. Mm-hmm. So I had that prestige. But to be honest, I think that music school is a little bit of a waste of money. And overall, I think the music industry is pretty screwed up. So while I don't regret going there, and it certainly opens up a lot of doors for me, I don't think that it's really necessarily worth the expense. And so if there's somebody who's interested in going into music, I don't really necessarily think that, Berkeley right now for 4 years is $300,000.
Yeah.
And so when you get out of school, you'll be making $10 an hour if you're lucky for the first 5 to 10 years. So the math on that just doesn't work out. And also, it's also what you put into the school. I think that when I was at Berkeley, I was reeling from my parents' divorce. It was my first time out. I don't know if I necessarily took advantage of it as much as I should have. And also, I just think, music school is a weird concept because there's somebody grading you. There's somebody deciding whether or not your music is worthwhile. And I don't think that that's really the best environment for all artists. It is somewhat, I guess, like a weird perversion of the free market. But I don't know. I just think that artists are better maybe in different environments, and maybe a lot of that intense school isn't really the best thing. I know a lot of people who went to Berkeley and then never wanted to play their instrument again.
Right.
So it's a mixed review. I think a lot of the foreign students took advantage of it a lot more so than the American students.
Sure. So if you were to do that again and have the opportunity, either go into Berkeley or go another route, would you take the other route? And if you would, what route would you do instead of going to school?
Well, my family spent around $100,000 for me to go to Berkeley. What could you do with $100,000? A lot, you know? I don't really think that it was for me. You make a lot of good contacts. People think that you're impressive because you went to Berkeley, but I don't know. If I had that money, I could promote a record, I could record a record, I could promote a record and still have money left over to live off of. Or I could just buy Bitcoin, and that would have been better.
Yeah.
I wasn't back then, so.
Right. Sure. Okay. So I guess that leads in my next question on that is on the cryptocurrency space, because you're heavily involved in that now. What made you originally interested in Bitcoin?
So in 2011, I found out about the Federal Reserve. And before that, I had been politically active because, that's what you do. If you have an interest in changing the world, you become politically active, which sort of lost its luster when I saw what happened in the 2012 presidential campaign. I was a big supporter of Ron Paul because I knew about the Federal Reserve. So Dennis Kucinich, he was out, Ron Paul was in. And it was an amazing opportunity because there weren't a lot of singer-songwriters lending their voice to that. There was Jordan Page, and he was really helpful in terms of getting me out there and supporting me. I took a lot of inspiration from Amy Allen. And Amy Allen is, famous for supporting Ron Paul, but she also had some bad things happen to her along the way. She had been beaten, and some people question as to what happened in that regard. But I decided to take up the mantle of the message of freedom, and so I put out my album Love and Liberty, which had a lot of songs kind of geared toward that community. And around that time, I was doing an event down in Tampa that was supported by Tony Galippi and Stephen Pear of BitPay. So they sponsored my performance, and then they came to New York to tell me all about Bitcoin. And what was really interesting about that was that even though I was, willing to stand in the streets holding up a sign and the Fed, all this stuff, I still couldn't really understand why I would need Bitcoin. I thought, why would I need alpaca socks? Clearly, I had never touched alpaca socks. They're very soft, very nice, luxurious feel. But so, I bought some Bitcoins at $11, and I didn't buy a lot because, how much money could I possibly have as an artist? But when I saw it going up, okay, that was definitely, a little bit interesting, right?
Yeah.
But really, when I was driving with Jeffrey Tucker, he's a famous economist, Austrian economist. He was working with FI at the time, and he kind of explained to me how Bitcoin could change the world, and it gave me a different vision. And it reminded me that, okay, here I am, a person that hates the Federal Reserve, and I still can't get behind this. We're going to need some better sales tools. So I wrote the Bitcoin jingle as a way to lure people in. And if you listen to the song, sure, it's a jingle, it's kind of silly, but the message is pretty staunchly anti-war. It opens up with, I didn't want to give any of my money to a nation based on war. It's a statement about the U.S. And really about any nation, because that's generally what they're good for. I look at the 20th century. More people died at the hands of government significantly than regular murderers. I mean, they attribute over 300 million deaths in the 20th century to governments. So I'll take my chances with the axe murderers personally. So, so I got really into Bitcoin, and I debuted my song at the Latin American Bitcoin Conference in 2013, which was in December. So it was, the first peak of Bitcoin.
Right.
And then I just sort of, found myself immersed in the crypto space. I became good friends with Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin. We ended up working on the world's first artist cryptocurrency, Tatiana Coin, which is a token, a meta token really, because it's built with counterparty on top of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum was not an option then, and nothing was really being tested out. Like, people were still calling it Bitcoin 2.0, when in reality, these were almost like the first ICOs. And the reason why I did that was because I had seen a lot of problems in the music industry. After Berkeley, I had started managing different recording studios, and it was great to be in such an amazing environment, but at the same time, I couldn't really afford to record there. None of the really good artists could afford to record there, because the music industry was set up where, now the new normal was like a Britney Spears type artist, which is certainly not me. And I thought that we were really losing something as a society because of that, because that music that did the pushback in the 60s and 70s really shaped the world that we live in today. And it wasn't because government was so kind and they decided to start giving us things. It was because they had the pressure from the public. So when you created Tatiana Coin, it was a little bit like a Kickstarter model. Mm-hmm. So if you donate to me for my album on Kickstarter, you donate $50, I send you a t-shirt, adios, that's it. But with a Tatiana Coin, now you would have $50 worth of Tatiana Coin that you could use in my store. You could use it at any time. Additionally, you could give the coin to a friend or to your mom or to whomever, and that would basically incentivize them to, when they got the coin, to get a crypto wallet, because how else are they going to hold their coin? So now you don't have to explain to them about the Federal Reserve, and now you basically snuck a Bitcoin wallet into their pocket, and they're just thinking about music. And then on the other side, with social media platforms, they were very helpful for independent artists. The do-it-yourself model, yay, except then you have to do it all yourself. And if you notice, from Friendster to MySpace to YouTube to Facebook, after some time you realize that you're actually building up an audience for the platform to monetize, and you don't actually have control over your contact with your fans, with Facebook being, I guess, the most egregious example, where they have tons of censorship, advertising in order to reach your fans, selective viewing of different content. I mean, the whole thing is very manipulated. So, that doesn't work for an artist long term. And so by creating a Tatiana Coin, now I have a permanent way of connecting with my fans for as long as they hold the token. However, when we built the token, building the token takes 5 minutes. It's really easy. But it's almost like having a car without any roads. Okay. And so Adam and I figured out, after we launched the coin, we raised about, $20,000 or something. And I used that to fund my album. But really what we needed was an infrastructure where the coin could function. Okay. So what we did was Adam started working on a company called Tokenly, and then we made a platform called Token.fm, which is a music platform. And so the music platform allows you to create your own digital assets. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a Tatiana Coin. It could be a fan token. It could be an access token. It could be an album ticket. But basically bringing the concept of finite back into the world of digital, which is infinitely copyable, which is why it's sort of underwhelming to go on Spotify if you're a super fan, because okay, great, I have access to the same thing that everybody else wants. And I believe that artists and fans want to be connected more deeply. So by having the artist coin, we would also open up a messaging layer so they could message with me directly based on their threshold of coins. I could put out content exclusively, sort of like a Patreon model. And then we also have a streaming side where you're paying artists 20 times more than what they would be getting paid at a regular streaming site. You're also incentivizing the fans by monetizing their playlist. So let's say you have a playlist on Token.fm and I'm one of the artists, and you have a certain threshold of listeners, then that means that you also get a cut of it. So it's good for everybody involved. And it also allows for the typical things that you see being worked on with blockchain technology. For example, registering your work, big deal. Yeah, you can register your work. And also splits, which are automatically put in, which are also pretty easy to do. I find it a little bit boring when I hear music companies